Interdimensional geometry. Understanding that our reality of the now moment only exists in our accelerative reference frame and is a function of warped spacetime, we may design geometries that exist within all of time and not simply the human experience. The geometries designed would need to be the opposite of our warping factor. We would see that for any object existing in our experience, after the moment has passed, light would crunch and matter would stretch back. These interdimensional geometries could act and work in similar ways that our modern geometries work, but through all of time, and not just our now. We can create antennae that send signals to various densities of experience, as well as moments in time. We can design robots that may interact with all of time. Pipes, fans, funnels, and more. These solid fifth-dimensional structures would be able to guide the primordial energy to create effects within our experience. These effects include shifting of density, time dilations in both directions, constant motion of matter, communication through time, altering quantum state, and many more effects. Understanding how these geometries influence our current moment will truly create a simulation experience. Let us now speculate on some typical geometries within our universe and how we may be able to warp them to have them manifest as geometries in the fifth dimension. It is important to understand that light and matter become one. The stretched light we perceive would be crunched, and the crunched energy that is matter would be stretched. This means that the proper geometry would consist of both matter and the light it emits. Geometry in the fifth dimension. A disk in our world consists of a flattened circular solid. In order to make a structure appear as a solid disk, we would need to give it a centralized stretch factor. It would also need to stay pointing in the same direction as our experience orbits the center of time. This means that we would need to have it rotate along the asymmetrical axis according to the rising and setting of the sun. Towards the sun, and on longer timescales, towards the galactic center, would be the direction of greater density. Geometrically, the object would be stretched from center. The shape may resemble the previous geometry. The light it naturally creates would also add to the geometry. Try to imagine the light coming off perpendicular to the surface. As the matter is stretched back downward, the entangled light would also travel with it. A pipe or beam may be one of the easiest objects to create in the fifth dimension. It could be done by using a cylindrical crystal emitting a constant beam of light from one end. Again, this object would need to be rotated asymmetrically in relationship to the greater center in order to appear as if it is not rotating in the fifth dimension. Understanding how lasers and crystals make shapes, we may now make more complex structures. This would be an example of a cone or a funnel in the fifth dimension. Like all objects manifesting in the betaverse, in order to keep this from rotating in all time, we would need to create a rotation in relationship to the greater center. What would a funnel in the fifth dimension do? How would that act in the fluid of time? You can imagine if you are pointing your funnel towards the center of time so that the smaller end is pointing away, that you might be able to compact an experience. This means that you would essentially be creating a thicker molecule than the one that would normally be manifesting. You would essentially be making the object denser and potentially changing the atomic number. A funnel pointing in the other direction would essentially slow the flow of density. It would make the object less dense. Again, this effect could potentially translate to transmutation of an element. A funnel pointed in the direction of our tangential velocity would again be making the fluid of time denser. Remember, tangential motion is related to the flow of time, while motion towards and away from the center is related to density. A funnel in this direction would cause experiences to flow slower. A funnel pointed in the other direction would cause them to flow faster. If towards galactic center relates to density, then perpendicular to galactic center would relate to time flow. Funnels are good and can be used for many applications. However, true mastery comes when we begin to use pipes and create pumps and valves that work in the fluid of time. Pipes help guide the direction of flow, while valves and pumps help guide the amount. The combination of these systems will allow us to make machinery powered by the fluid of time itself. Interdimensional machinery. Pipes in combination with pumps will allow us to more accurately control the flow of the fluid of time. A pipe could be made by making a ring of crystals that emit laser light in one direction. Inside our pipe, we would want to add a fan or pump to increase or decrease the natural flow. A fan could be made by rotating a series of angled planes perpendicular to the ring. Flat surfaces or planes can be created by making cones that follow a logarithmic curvature to infinity at the center points. They would be similar to the flat disk we designed earlier. Controlling conscious density. Earlier in the book, we discussed how our magic sphere may have a natural 24-hour orbit through the crystal of time. We saw that transitions occur at the halfway points of conscious density. With our new understanding of interdimensional geometries, we may now speculate on how to control the flow of our conscious experience. What shapes and technologies may allow us to travel to various densities of experience? In Time Atom, we designed a very simple interdimensional telescope that allowed our betaverse to harmonize with bigger or smaller rings of perception. Let's now speculate on ways to control or encourage our harmonics throughout the day. When it comes to cognitive processing, you want your brain to be working at high cycles. This is why our normal fluctuations is at the 20 Hz beta range. During extreme focus, we may enter the slow gamma range, and during out-of-body experiences, we approach the fast gamma. This may be an obvious statement, but by looking at the orbit of conscious density, we see it is easier to obtain certain harmonics at various times of the day. For example, if you are already in a beta state, it may be easier to transition to a fast gamma state versus if you are starting from a delta state. The same is true for the opposite. If you are attempting to connect with the harmonics of the lower verse, then it is easier to start the process from the delta harmonic. For example, we are in a beta state from 7 a.m. to approximately 7:30 p.m., which is a 12.5-hour period. The halfway point would be 6 hours and 15 minutes into the cycle, which translates into 1:15 p.m. for the average person following the natural circadian rhythm. Theoretically, 1:15 p.m. may be the best time of day to attempt to harmonize your magic sphere to the gamma wave type. According to the circadian rhythm, we are tuned to delta waves from 11 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. This is a shorter window than the beta harmonic, however the same principles would still apply. This is approximately 3 hours and 30 minutes. The halfway point would be at 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is 12:45 a.m. This would be the ideal time to harmonize your magic sphere to the lower verse. These points of most submersion would be the moments of when you can maximize the natural harmonic. For example, we pass through the thetaverse twice a day, 2:30 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. This makes the ideal times for theta interaction to be at 4 a.m. and also 10:45 p.m. Those would be the best times of day to use technology to enhance the theta state. With interdimensional machinery, we are able to guide our consciousness into different harmonics of resonance. For denser experiences, we would need to point our funnels away from the center of time and in essence increase the pressure of the fluid by using pumps. It may also be possible to create dams that would cause the fluid to build up deeper in a sense. For less dense experiences, our funnel would need to be pointed in the opposite direction. Maximization of an individual's harmonic would come through the use of filters as well. Similar to how we may filter light, we may filter energy stemming from various densities of experience. A filter may be created by weaving fabrics in the fifth dimension. Fabrics would relate to cloths in our regular day in relationship to fluids and impurities. A fabric would be able to catch thicker densities while allowing thinner ones to pass by. Thicker densities may then be guided by use of pipes and valves and in essence be purified. A conscious precession. When we first look at our orbit through conscious density, the orbit may look somewhat erratic, as it does not resemble a typical planetary orbit. It has one big circle while in delta, followed by smaller circles of alpha and beta. In total, each orbit may consist of a tight orbit and a loose orbit. However, when you compare it to the precession of a gyroscope hanging on a string, it matches perfectly. This implies that consciousness is like a gyroscope processing through the fluid of time. Let's now use our fifth dimensional model of the crystal of time and compare it with our experience with gyroscopes. Gyroscopic precession is somewhat of a mystery when it comes to physics. However, when you consider the dimension of density, it becomes clear what forces and actions may be occurring. Consider the center of gyroscopic precession as the same as the center of time for human consciousness. What we notice is that if you increase your velocity in the direction of orbit, that you will drift further from the center of time. And if you slow the velocity of orbit, you will fall inward. Drifting further from the center of time would imply that your experience is becoming less dense. You would literally be closer to the lower verse in the dimension of density. Drifting inward would imply that your experience is becoming denser. You would be closer to the noviverse. Now, to specifically relate this to a gyroscope, when you force precession of a gyroscope, it literally will rise relative to the gravitational field in 3D space. When you slow precession, the gyroscope will literally fall lower in 3D spacetime. This is because you are moving its location within the dimension of density. Earlier in the book, we discussed the total energy of the fifth dimension based on gravitational attraction and motion relative to our experience. What we notice is that E equals 1/2 mcr is the energy associated with the synchronization of the light state. Natural gyroscopic precession is very interesting because there is no momentum associated with it. However, when you force precession, you notice that great energies may be created. As precession is forced, you could say that the radius of orbit changes. Comparing this to the energy of synchronization, we see that the energy difference in relationship to radius is the change in radius times 1/2 the mass times the speed of light. This shows that over-unity systems based off gyroscopic precession may be able to generate more energy than directly turning matter into energy. In other words, E equals 1/2 mcr has the ability to be greater than E equals mc squared, when the radius becomes comparable to the distance light travels in a second. It is important to note that the unit of radius will be in ms, not m. A pyramid and you. What does the shape of a pyramid do to the fluid of time? Experiments have been performed with pyramids in an attempt to understand what is happening. There are many interesting findings. It has been noted that razor blades will stay sharper for longer, water becomes more energetic and holds a greater charge, fruits and vegetables will degrade or rot at a much slower rate. A pyramid would act like a bowl, collecting the fluid of time, meanwhile smoothing out any incoming erratic flux. Bowls are very interesting because they allow for standing harmonics to be created and amplified. It is possible that the pyramids act as a prism while amplifying spirit. What does that mean? When you amplify the spirit of the matter, you are amplifying the natural state of the magic sphere. This means that crystals will take a more stable, energetic shape. They will become more pure and more harmonized with the universe. A double-sided pyramid may be the best shape to amplify your natural resonance. It would amplify energy from both lower and higher densities. When you relate this concept to DNA, you notice that it will have healing effects. Pacing of DNA is similar to pacing of the body. When existing in your golden or silver spot, your DNA is healthiest. During moments of pacing is when deformations occur to the system. Deformation or strains exist when not in harmony with an incoming light state of the universe. This translates to mental stress and physical sickness.